Hey, Robert, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Great. My name is Robert Bolin. I am the CEO of Bunch Enterprise. We're a New York City-based software development company. We primarily build video applications for the elite enterprises, the Fortune 500. I spent a good, I don't know, over 10 years of my career in enterprise software sales. And before that, I was in early stage venture-backed startups and with a heavy technology focus early on in my career.
Yeah. What you like about sales?
For me, I think the best way I can sum it up is that, software sales, you can write your own narrative,
Yeah.
right? You can be the best rep, you can be mediocre, you can choose to take huge risks, you can work at a big company or a small company. But whatever you do when you come into a situation, you can architect that however you want to. And that freedom was, and the ability to make a good living and to make more money the harder you work. I never understood really working at a salary job where
Yeah.
you had a limit. So that was the things that really attracted me to it.
And how'd you get into it? Because it looks like you started off as an engineer.
I came out of college with computer science, and I went and worked at Lockheed Martin, and I knew instantly that I was going to be the world's worst employee. I knew from the day one, like
You
I got
were
a
a
job there.
cubicle dweller.
Yeah, no, look, Lockheed Martin's a great company to work for. It's huge. But I got a job there, and I just couldn't show up at like 8:30 every day and sit in the same chair for 9 hours and do whatever. And everyone that I walked around, I had a high technical aptitude, but everyone that I met at work said, "Hey, man, you've got to go into sales. You got to start your own company. You got to do something different. You're not meant for this." And I naturally gravitated out of that.
And what was that? Being that you had the energy, the personality, the drive.
I think that the first day I showed up, it instantly wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Like my parents were so proud of me when I got out of college, and they were like, "Oh, great, you got this great stable job at a big company that we recognize." And I was like, this is not good enough. Like the money I wasn't making good enough, the path to success was too long. I didn't want to stay in that status quo that long to get to where I wanted to go.
A-
So, it's time to move on.
And how'd you become good at enterprise sales? Because it's hard.
It is hard. It is definitely, look, I think to be great at it, um, takes a little bit. It takes a few different things, right?
Yeah.
So I spent some time at early stage startups that were like pre-revenue, pre-product. I traveled to the ends of the earth to try to find customers and sales, and I got good at kind of selling a vision and selling a concept, which was something that came into play later on in my career that helped me a lot. But I got good by a few fundamental rules. I was in the military, came from a military family. And discipline, respect for your elders, and listening to people that were in positions higher than you was like paramount in my life. I spent a little bit of time at IBM, and each part of those things played a role. But when I got out and I started working at Cumu, I met the greatest player coach of all time, my
Okay.
boss, John Greenstein. And I did everything he told me to. And I think part of that discipline built a good process, and I followed the process. So it's a bit of hard work, but then it's a bit of process too. You put the two together, you can be great.
And what did he tell you to do that you didn't or you weren't doing?
It's interesting. So if I rewind just a little bit, right before I started, my 10-year span at a video streaming company, I spent a year at IBM.
Yeah.
And I came out of those early stage growth startups that I was working at, and I really needed like a foundational piece to get my enterprise sales career started. So went to IBM, and going to IBM, you can have many different jobs. It's a great company. It's a bit like going into the army, right? There's so many people
Big.
there.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand. Like I went to work there, and there was so much process. I only had 8 accounts I could sell into. I felt like I had 6 bosses. I felt like I couldn't. It took 2 people always to turn the keys to launch the missile there at IBM. Like you couldn't do anything yourself.
Yeah.
We'd go to a sales call, and it was like a school bus of people. And I just was like, is this sales? Is this what enterprise sales is? And I remember my interview with John Greenstein. I sat down, and he was like, "Hey, what's it like? What's going on?" I said, I feel like I'm a maverick chained up at a petting zoo full of ponies. I just want to run and sell and make money. And I'm surrounded by all these safety factors that I can't do anything. And he laughed. And then it was exactly the opposite. The next job I had, it was exactly the opposite. So one thing I learned at IBM though was how to work through a matrix organization.
Matrix organization.
Like how to work through a company where there's like, so many people and so many decision makers, and how to navigate that. So IBM is a good education, honestly. I think it's like a foundational piece that I always pull on. But that was the biggest deal, like recognizing I always wanted more and then finding that opportunity.
That's it. We were at IBM at the same time, and half the job is working internally.
Yeah. Like half of it was selling internally, and then selling externally, and then getting people out of your deals. Like I just had to get people out of my deals. Like, just, please, like, don't take my revenue. So that was the thing I had to control as well.
Yeah. And what was it like then going to, how big was that company, the next one?
Cumu, when I joined, was like, less than 20 people or something.
There you go.
Yeah, it was, San Francisco based, Silicon Valley, right there in San Bruno. And listen, I think a lot of things came together. I was searching for it for a while, but I had the right acumen, I had the right experience, and then I found the right team. And Cumu had a culture at the time, had a culture of performance.
Yeah.
It was kind of fraternal. Like it was like you join this club and we're all there to like perform. And it had some great people. Michael Ping was the VP of sales at the time. And we had a lot of bravado as an organization. And man, that really helped. It really made us a good sales team.
And you felt at home there?
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah. For a handful of years, it was the best. It was absolutely the best.
And was New York City new to you, or was that where you grew up?
I military kid, so I lived all around the world, right? Yeah. I've been everywhere. I settled into Atlanta for a little while. I spent 5 or 6 years in Atlanta, and I kind of graduated from Atlanta to Manhattan. Yeah, it's, New York is like everything that Atlanta doesn't have, right? New York is all concrete. Atlanta's lifestyle, it's easy. And once I made the transition, it's like, yeah, you can't go back. I love the pace of New York City. I love doing business there. And it's more like, it's kind of a beat that it has a resonance.
It has that. You notice that as soon as you get out of the cab.
Right.
The pace and the tempo is like
right.
No other place.
Yeah, you better be ready to hustle right when you get off the plane. Or like you better start hustling on the landing, because but that's good. I think that sales is one of those things that if you do it in your whole life, if you do it at every point of your life. I used to play some pro sports when I was over in France for a bit. And one of those things is like, if you do it in other aspects of your life, you will also perform highly in sales, right? You can't just be lax in everything else, but then also outperform in sales. It doesn't match.
So growing up in a military family, you moved every year, every 2 years?
Yeah. There were years where we moved every year, for sure.
So I got to imagine having to acclimate to a new school, new friends every year really thickens your skin and requires you to be.
Yeah, that was the thing. I just recently did this class, this executive education at Harvard, and they make you do like this personality assessment where you send it out to a bunch of people and everyone marks things. And the number one thing was adaptability, right? And I was like, well, that's a no-brainer, right? Being able to just adapt to different situations, like walk into one customer and be a certain way, go to a different place. Because I was doing business all over the world, right? When I was before IBM and before that, I was, early stage software companies. I was traveling the globe to find my customers. And one day I'd wake up in Paris, next day I'd be in Los Angeles. Those are two totally different places. And being able to hop into different places and do business it's a skill. It's a good experience to have.
It is. And a lot of reps do the opposite. They like only hang with the people that are like them.
Right. Like a regional rep, right? If you're a regional rep in Texas and you've only sold in Texas, you'll probably be great selling in Texas. But if you leave there and go to New York, it's going to be a bit different pace for you.
Yeah. Because I had a manager one time out of Manhattan, and I'd take him down to North Carolina, and it was just apples and oranges.
Right.
I said, next time, let me lead the meeting.
Listen, hey, it works both ways though, right?
Does.
I remember early on in my career, couple of years into working at Cumu, I got kicked out of a sales call in Buffalo, New York, right? Because I came up from Manhattan, went to this small town, Buffalo, to this customer that wasn't. I did well in financial services, insurance, knowledge workers, real aggressive knowledge working companies. And they just didn't like us. And I remember I called my boss. I said, hey, I got an email from this customer. They're not really happy. It's the only time it ever happened. He was like, well, don't change. You just can't go back to Buffalo, you know? So I was like, okay, well, at least that's not that big of a deal, but certain personalities work in certain places for sure.
And did you move up to be a people manager at that company?
You know, I do now as a CEO of a software
course,
company,
yeah.
right? We've got, you know, employees and we've got contractors, but I never managed people. I was always an individual contributor. I was really
Yeah.
focused on achievement. I was really focused on, you know, W-2 and, you know, success. I had great managers. So like, I didn't want to manage. They were doing a great job. Right.
Yeah.
So I kept it as is.
So what was it like going from that to starting a company? Because a lot of detail in starting a company.
It is, but I'll tell you that we do a lot of the same things. So I have a lot of different skills now, and people say that, you know, experience is what you have when you don't get what you want, right? It's like you learn some things along the way. I had to start my own company because Cumu, the company I was working for, just kind of stopped innovating and they stopped producing good product. They stopped servicing customers. And I had such good relationships and I was delivering for customers. I said, look, we're going to start a company and just start building the products that you want. And not much changed other than I spend less time selling. I really love to sell. I love to go win deals. I get hungry when I see an RFP get issued. I love to talk to customers. I get to do that like 2% of the time now.
Yeah.
Right. Like now 98% of the time is human resources, you know, product development, engineering reviews. It's not as fun, but it's fun in a different way.
And have you thought of like getting like a COO type person to kind of take on the trains run on time thing?
You know, that's the next stage at Bunch. You know, we've been growing exponentially over the last 5 years. So we've been, you know, adding revenue 30, 50, 40% every year. I think last year we did 50% more than the year before. Things are going quickly. We've been in a pretty heads down product development in the last couple of years. And yeah, we're going to start operationalizing. We're going to grow, right? We're going to do either a raise or we're going to grow through just customer growth, but we're going to probably do a COO role where someone operationalizes certain parts of our company to, you know, so we can focus on other things.
And how long did it take before you knew it was going to work? Was it immediately or did it take a year, a couple of deals?
That's a good question. And I don't know if there was like an aha moment where I'm like, this is definitely going to work. I always knew that as long as I focused on serving the customer, solving the customer needs, we'd always have business because customers would always come to me because they're like, I can't get this solved a certain way, or I need you to help me do this. So I always knew that we'd always have business. When I really started seeing things take off, so we recently released a product that does asynchronous video for work, where you can shoot a video and send it to someone securely. That when I started to see the traction from that, I knew I was like, this is going to be bigger than I actually ever thought. I was like, we're gonna go really wide with this. So I'd say like about a year and a half ago when I really started seeing that traction.
And did you go through W-2 withdrawal? You know, that.
Yeah, I did. I really did. One of the things I liked about being at a high level of sales and like being a enterprise sales rep was that I felt like I was always in the pocket, right? I was like, all I had to do is execute. And when I had a team that was running well around me, all I had to do was do the thing I knew how to do every time and no mistakes, and we would get paid. Like I said, I don't get to spend as much time selling. So yeah, it's hard. Leaving the W-2 if I'm an enterprise sales rep, it's hard to do.
Well, that's it, because especially when that's a big motive in your career, to go from that to little to nothing, because when you're a startup, you're plowing it all back in.
Right. You know, Bunch wasn't a startup for very long. I would say we were a startup for like 5 minutes because I had all the customers already. They were asking me for things. They needed technology. We were kind of plug and play. So opposite from like, if you look at like a Slack or somebody like that, they started off doing like
R&D.
Right. Well, they started off doing like really small deals and they tried to grow to get the big customers. We started off at Bunch on the inside. We started off with the big customers. Like we started off with the world's best bank, with the world's best credit card company, with just these elite companies. And now we're trying to go broader. We're actually trying to make our product simpler to use. Like it's like too secure, right? It's like too encrypted. And that's one of the things that it's challenging. It's challenging to go both directions, regardless where you start.
And have you hired a sales team yet, or is it too early?
I haven't, but that's coming too.
Yeah.
So I think in this next stage of growth, I think we'll operationalize, we'll grow our sales team, and then we'll also grow our support team, because our innovation dev team is pretty large right now. We've really been focused on product.
So having spent a long time at one company, which is really good, you probably got a good sense of what a great enterprise sales rep is.
Right. I'll tell you, it comes down to a few things. You have to be dynamic. But for me, and this is what worked for me. And I always tried to get other people to pick it up. And so did my boss, right? My boss, John Greenstein at the time, he used to be, I think he spent some time as a copywriter or something like back in his career. And he was really good at business writing. So when we started, we ended up doing this process called the master document, right? And I tell everyone to just always ask me, like, how do you do such big deals? How do you close deals every quarter? How are you so consistent? And I was like, look, the deals close themselves. Like, I don't close the deals close themselves, man. Like, and that was my whole approach. So every sales rep, as you go into a sales process or a sales opportunity, most sales reps just get beat up by the customer and they can't enforce their agenda, right? That's the problem. So what I usually do, I sold more by saying no than I did by saying yes, but I never answered questions on the phone. I never answered questions in the email. I didn't just flip over a quote with pricing in it.
Yeah.
I put everything into a document. So call one was page one of the document. And instead of typing that email, I put it in the document. And the next call, and then the legal document, and then the architecture document, and the security analysis. By the time you got to the end of that sales cycle, that document was this big, right? But do you give it to your person that you're selling to and you say, hey, tear the first page off, write your name on it, bring it to the CIO. All the work's done for you. The deals close themselves. And all it takes is discipline to do a little bit of organization, and you create this artifact that's way more powerful than a bunch of emails that are in your inbox. But it takes a little bit of discipline.
Yeah. I mean, the work is once and then it's modified, like boilerplate, right?
There's a little bit of boilerplate in there, like when you're talking about like company introduction or whatever, but you'll see it. Like when you see a sales rep, they'll go back and forth with a customer. They'll answer a bunch of emails. They'll talk on the phone. They'll send over proposals. They'll send over brochures. Man, if you organize all of that and just say, attached to this email, it's revision 10 of the master document. Oh, you asked another question? It's on revision 11. You wanted pricing change? It's on revision 12. And by the time you get to the end of that sales cycle, the customer, one, sees how much work that you and them have created. Two, all their homework is done for them. So it makes it super easy for them to go through that matrix organization. They can go to their boss and say, oh, I did all the work. It's here. Deals close themselves.
It's social proof, or because
right.
the CFO and finance and procurement and legal all need to fill a file, right?
And that was the thing too. I saw when I saw bad reps, right? As things dissipated at Cumu, I saw bad reps. They would all have excuses at the end of the quarter. Oh, this deal is going to slip till next quarter because this other thing happened, or whatever. And that was that's a problem, right? That was always, to me, that was always a huge problem, right?
Yeah. And how big were those deals?
One of the things about Cumu, I think small, medium, large, it was typically like 250, 500, and $1 million. Okay. We were huge elephant hunters when it came to doing deals. We truly, like, our competitors would sell something for 100K, we'd sell it for 300 or 400K. I mean, no problem. So the approach there was always get the customer to spend strategically so you can support them strategically, right? If they're going to go to their wallet, don't just take $50. Take all of it, right? Take all of the money. I typically didn't do a lot of smaller deals or smaller transactions.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand about enterprise deals, is that since they're not spending their money, they're spending the company's money. They want to do it right so that they stay out of trouble. Their motive is not to save money, but to accomplish something.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I saw reps that weren't maybe so, the weaker reps always discounted early, or
Yes.
they go into a sales cycle and they say, well, the first price is the best price. No, it's not. Like if you go into a sales cycle, the first thing I do is I never talk about the product, right? The second thing I do is I never put out a small number because it's only going to get smaller, right? Because procurement's going to get involved, it may get competitive, but also your job is to convince the customer, hey, you need to make an investment if this is important to you. If it's not important to you, why am I here? Just buy anything else. And I always say this, like enterprise selling is not dead, right? There's a lot of focus on SDRs and BDRs and these like online tools that sell themselves. I think that's noise. I honestly think it's noise because enterprise sales is all about the need, the service, the delivery, the quality. That's the key there, right? So we just kept the focus on that, and we would bundle professional services, event services, the actual product, the maintenance, multi-year deals. Like there's a lot of ways to architect a deal that's larger than something that's departmental.
And I like that that if call to action, because I always use
Right,
that. I go, if you're serious, if this is important, if you want,
right,
do this,
right,
then, because they don't know that they're talking about a thing
right,
and you want them to buy it and they want to solve something, but there might be some tire kicking, there might be some education, some curiosity.
right.
The if makes them focus on the algorithm in their head, the heuristic.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that bad reps do a lot is they show up, and if I actually just bought your book, that Maverick selling book. I haven't read it yet, but I'll read it and get back to you. But I used to read a lot of Sandler sales, and they just say like, don't spill your candy in the lobby. Like, don't like just shut up when you show up to a sales call and ask a question. Why are we here? What do you do for your job? What does this company do? And then you use all of that information to formulate some solution and come back to them and say, hey, this is how our product can serve you in a certain way. This is the benefit from it. So many reps just don't do that. They just show up and start rattling off information and discounting prices. And at the end of the year, their W-2 just looks like nothing, right? Because they're not focused on solutions.
Yeah. They look about talking about who they are, what they do, how's it work, what's it cost.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think enterprise selling is dead. I think there was something. Yeah. I don't think it's dead at all. But I mean, I think there's something that went down in the market where, when the whole shift to cloud happened, everyone said, oh, it's so easy. Oh, it's so easy. You just turn it on and it's a service. And it's like, yeah, but that's one part of it, right? And a lot of CEOs just said, hey, let's put a sales process in, let's get SDRs and BDRs and let's just do that. That doesn't work, I think. And it's not long for this world.
Well, that's it. I've got a client that I'm working with on that because they call it land and expand, but it takes 18 months to expand. So
yeah,
why don't we get that down to 6 months? And they just had no idea how companies buy.
right. And it's like, if you're going to go through the pain of doing legal security, why go through the pain for a 25 or 50K deal when you go through all that pain?
Right.
You could do a 3-year, 255, or $500,000 deal.
Right.
Same amount of work. You're going to do the work either way.
And that's it. And if you do land and expand, by the time you try and expand, 2 of your competitors have already landed.
Right.
And then you're in a beauty contest where they've already bought different products.
Yeah, we never had that problem. I never had that problem, to be honest with you. When I engaged with a customer, we took all of your available time and we took all of your available resources.
That is like the simplest strategy, isn't it?
Right. Like we would get into your company and we would grab a hold of you, but that's not saying that it was detrimental to the customer. We would grab a hold of you. We would do literally everything for you. Like we were there. The answer was always yes. If we didn't have it in our product, the answer was yes. We would go find it from a partner. If we didn't have the feature, the answer was yes. You make a commitment, we will write that feature. We had a lot of success with that approach. because
Right.
there's always something that you don't have.
And that's it, because reps would say, well, I can't do that because I got to work on so many deals. But how many deals are really going to close in a quarter?
Correct. Once you get down to the mechanics of it, right? And I think a lot of people don't think about that stuff. They don't
No,
think about,
it's a
hey,
numbers game. It's like,
yeah,
well,
right. It's not a numbers game. It's like you have to work everything backwards. So actually on my wall, I used to write like a huge calendar, and it would basically have the critical points of, how long it took to get things done. And
yes,
then it would have holidays on it, because you're not going to get someone
get
from
much done on
procurement to
4th of
call you
July.
back on Thanksgiving, right? It's not going to happen. Um, and once you knew that, you could accurately forecast for the business. And that's what makes a good enterprise rep. So the one is selling to customers. Two is forecasting correctly to the business. And three is like using your team's resources correctly. I cannot tell you how many times I saw enterprise sales reps wear out sales engineers, because the sales engineers are like, I don't want to work on Steve's deals. I only want to work on Boland's deals, because I know if I work on those deals, there's a piece of cheese at the end of that maze.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work on these deals over here because I don't get paid. And then you start to get yourself a crew. And that's what I had for about 10 years. I had a crew of people that anytime I called for anything, we handled it. And it's rare that you get that culture and that good synergy, but when you do, run with it and
Oh,
run hard.
it's critical. And I
Yeah,
love what you said about the calendar, because time is one of the very important elements of a deal.
right, right.
And people
Uh,
don't think about it. They're like, oh, I got plenty of time, or, it takes one day to go through procurement, one day to go through legal. No, it doesn't. It
right.
takes a lot of time to get through. And not just
Um,
forecasting internally, but managing your time. Your time. What do you do in what order?
yeah, so there's a lot of that. And I always used to operate on some real basic rules. When I came into that organization, my boss, John Greenstein, was like, hey, listen, here's a few things. One, we do this master document approach. He's like, your choice. If you do it, it made me super successful. And I think to this day, creating artifacts of value are a big deal. The second thing, deals don't get better with age. Like, number one rule, I would just walk up and down the streets of New York City being
It's
like,
not
deals don't
cheese.
get better with
Yeah.
age, right? Like, go now, go quick. But then the other ones, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. Like, don't go crazy, right? You've got to give people choices. And I think every deal, someone would say, what's your pricing? I'm like, well, here's small, medium, and large. Here's something you can buy. Here's something you should buy. And here's something you probably won't, but maybe, and that focus and that structure always worked well for us.
Cool. Hey, Robert, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about your company?
You know what? I think all my contact information is right here. So bunchenterprise.com. You can email me at robertbowen@bunchenterprise.com, or find me at LinkedIn. I love talking sales. So hopefully, have me back anytime. We want to dive into some of these things in detail.